At sunrise, the Lion King stood over 6 helpless puppies, his sworn enemies by every law of the wild. One bite would end their lives in seconds. No rival would question him, no instinct would be betrayed. But as their weak cries echoed beneath his shadow, something inside the most ruthless predator on the savannah began to fracture. Because in that moment, Titan faced a choice no king was ever meant to face: follow the instincts that made him powerful, or defy them for lives that should never have mattered to him at all. And what he chose next would not only decide the fate of those puppies, it would shatter everything he believed about strength, survival, and himself. At dawn, when the savannah still held its breath between night and day, the sound came rolling across old Pejeta like distant thunder. It was a roar so deep and commanding that birds lifted from the acacia trees in panicked waves, and even the wind seemed to pause. Every creature within miles understood the message without needing translation. Titan was awake. Titan was present, and this land belonged to him. He stood alone on a blackened ridge of volcanic rock, his massive frame silhouetted against the pale Kenyan sky. At nearly 600 pounds of muscle, scars, and instinct, Titan was everything the wild demanded of a king. His mane, darkened with age and dust, framed a face shaped by years of combat. One ear bore a permanent tear from a fight long forgotten by everyone except his body. His shoulders carried old wounds, reminders of rivals who had tested him and lost. For more than 4 years, Titan had ruled this territory without allies and without mercy. Unlike other male lions who formed coalitions, shared borders, or tolerated neighbors, Titan had chosen absolute solitude. His domain stretched wide across grassland, rocky outcrops, and seasonal waterholes, claimed not by negotiation, but by force. Hyenas avoided his scent trails, leopards altered their routes, and African wild dogs, efficient, intelligent, relentless, had learned the hardest lesson of all. Titan did not merely chase them away. He killed them. To Titan, wild dogs were not prey. They were competitors, thieves who stole the herds he considered his rightful resource. Over the years, he had destroyed entire hunting parties, crushing them beneath his weight or snapping their necks with terrifying efficiency. Rangers had documented the pattern with unease. Titan was not acting outside nature's rules, but he enforced those rules with an intensity that bordered on obsession. From a distance, hidden behind scrub and binocular lenses, Ranger Mike Harris watched the lion with familiar caution. Mike had worked in African reserves for nearly a decade, but Titan still unsettled him. There was something final about the way this lion moved, something that suggested no compromise existed in his world. Mike respected Titan, even admired him, but he never forgot what Titan was capable of. That morning, Titan lowered his head and roared again, a long, resonant declaration that rolled through the plains. It was not anger, it was confirmation, the kind of sound that told the world everything was exactly as it should be. But the land beneath his paws told a different story. The night before, old Pejeta had burned. A rare convergence of dry winds and lightning had ignited the grasslands to the east, turning sections of the reserve into fields of ash and smoke. Fire crews and rangers had worked through the darkness to contain it, but nature always moved faster than humans. By morning, parts of Titan's territory were unrecognizable. Fallen trees lay like broken bones. Familiar paths were erased. The air still smelled of soot and scorched earth. Titan began his patrol as he always did. Slow, deliberate, methodical. Each step was a test of the land. Each breath carried information. He moved through charred grass, past the blackened remains of bushes where antelope once hid. His senses catalogued loss with quiet precision. Then he stopped. The scent hit him sharply, cutting through smoke and ash like a blade. Wild dogs. Instantly, Titan's body responded. His muscles tightened, His tail flicked once, his head lowered as his nostrils flared. This was not surprise. Wild dogs were always probing, always searching for weakness. Fire created opportunity, and opportunity invited trespass. But something about the smell was wrong. It lacked the sharp, musky confidence of adult hunters. There was no aggression in it, no territorial challenge. Instead, it carried something thin and frantic, something unformed. Titan followed the scent downslope toward a section of land where the fire had burned hottest. Ranger Mike, watching from afar, felt his chest tighten. He had seen this before. Titan would locate the source, eliminate it, and move on. That was the pattern. That was the law of survival. Mike adjusted his binoculars, preparing himself for what he believed was inevitable. If you're still with us, you're part of a remarkable community here at Whispering Hearts, where real stories of extraordinary animal connections come to life. Every subscriber helps us share more heart-touching moments that reveal the power of compassion across species. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because the journey ahead is one you'll feel long after the story ends. Titan descended into a shallow ravine where the fire had collapsed part of the earth. Charred roots jutted out like claws. The ground was unstable, broken by heat and sudden rain during the night. He moved carefully now, guided not by urgency but by curiosity sharpened into focus. Then he heard it, a sound so faint it barely registered as real, a thin, broken whimper. Titan froze. The sound came again, followed by another and another, high-pitched, weak, alive. He stepped closer and looked down. At the base of the ravine, partially hidden by ash and fallen debris, were 6 small shapes pressed together. Their coats were mottled and incomplete, their limbs too thin, their ears too large for their bodies. African wild dog puppies, no more than a few weeks old. Too young to run, too young to hunt, too young to understand death, they were trapped. The earth around them had collapsed, creating a bowl of loose soil and burnt roots they could not climb. Their eyes were open but unfocused. One lifted its head weakly and let out a sound that was more breath than voice. For Titan, the calculation should have taken seconds. 6 future rivals, 6 mouths that would one day hunt his prey. 6 lives that nature itself had delivered to him, helpless and defenseless. The solution was simple. 1 bite, 1 heavy paw, 30 seconds, and the problem would never exist again. Ranger Mike held his breath. Titan stood over them, his shadow swallowing the ravine. His jaws parted slightly, revealing teeth designed to end lives with terrifying speed. Every instinct forged by evolution, hunger, and dominance rose within him, demanding action. But he did not move. Seconds passed, then more. The puppies whimpered again, pressing closer together as if warmth alone might save them. Something inside Titan shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. A pause where there should have been none, a silence where instinct expected violence. For the first time in his reign, the Lion King did not act as the wild expected. And in that hesitation, the foundation of everything Titan believed about himself began to crack. The smell of ash still clung to the air as the sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of morning mist. Old Pejeta no longer looked like the land Titan had memorized with every step of his long reign. The fire had rewritten the terrain overnight, erasing trails, collapsing dens, and exposing what had once been hidden. Nature, indifferent and exacting, had torn up its own rule book. Titan remained at the edge of the ravine, his massive frame unmoving. Below him, the 6 wild dog puppies huddled together, unaware that their survival balanced on the edge of a single decision. Their small bodies trembled, not from fear of him, but from exhaustion and cold. The fire had spared their lives, but stolen everything else. From his vantage point, hundreds of yards away, Ranger Mike lowered his binoculars slightly, disbelief tightening his jaw. Titan should have acted by now. Every record, every instinct, every brutal certainty about this lion pointed toward one outcome. And yet the ravine remained quiet. Mike shifted his weight and felt the ash crunch beneath his boots. He forced himself to stay still. Interference was not an option. Rangers protected ecosystems, not individual lives. Still, something about this moment felt fragile, as if even the smallest movement might shatter it. Titan finally moved, but not forward. He stepped back. The motion was subtle, almost hesitant, and it sent a ripple of confusion through the silence. His tail swayed once, slowly, not in irritation, but in thought. His ears pivoted, catching distant sounds. The low call of a hornbill, the rustle of a startled antelope, the distant crackle of smoldering brush. Life was returning to the land, cautiously and unevenly. The puppies whimpered again. Titan lowered himself to the ground, forelegs folding beneath his weight. The posture was not one of surrender, but of observation. His eyes never left the ravine. He studied the puppies with the same intensity he once reserved for rival males. Yet the calculation unfolding behind his gaze followed a different path. The fire had changed the rules. These pups had not crossed into his territory by choice. They had not hunted his prey or challenged his dominance. They were survivors of a disaster, scattered by chaos far greater than any lion's will. Nature itself had placed them here, stripped of protection, waiting for a verdict they could not influence. Titan's breath slowed. Below him, one of the puppies, a smaller one with a pale patch across its muzzle, attempted to climb the loose soil. Its tiny claws slipped uselessly, sending it sliding back into the cluster of bodies. The effort drained what little strength it had left. It collapsed, pressing its head against another pup's side. Something tightened in Titan's chest. It was not sympathy as humans understood it. It was recognition. Long before Titan had become king, before scars and solitude had shaped him, he had known vulnerability. As a young lion, displaced by older males and drought, he had wandered alone longer than most survived. Hunger and fear had taught him violence early, but they had also taught him what it meant to be small in a world that did not pause. The memory surfaced, uninvited, unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. Titan rose again, this time with purpose. He approached the ravine slowly, deliberately, his movements controlled. Each step sent small avalanches of ash sliding down the slope. The puppies sensed the vibration and stirred, their cries growing sharper. One turned its face upward, eyes cloudy but searching. Ranger Mike's pulse hammered in his ears. Titan leaned forward, his massive head lowering until it hovered just above the ravine's edge. His jaws opened slightly, not in threat, but in assessment. Steam curled faintly from his breath as it met the cooler air. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Titan extended a single forepaw. The gesture was precise. He tested the ground, shifting his weight carefully. The soil held. Slowly, he stepped down into the ravine, his body angling to distribute pressure across the unstable surface. It was a risk. A collapse could trap him, injure him, weaken his claim to the land. Still, he descended. The puppies erupted into frantic movement as the shadow engulfed them. Tiny bodies pressed together, cries overlapping in a chorus of panic. Titan paused, allowing the noise to crest and then fade as they exhausted themselves. He did not bare his teeth. He did not growl. He lowered his head. The smallest puppy lay closest to him now, sides fluttering with shallow breaths. Titan's jaws hovered above it, close enough that Ranger Mike instinctively raised his binoculars again, heart pounding. Carefully, almost impossibly so, Titan closed his mouth around the loose skin at the back of the puppy's neck. There was no crushing force, no shake, just pressure enough to lift. The puppy went still, instinct overriding fear. Its limbs dangled as Titan raised it from the ground, the contrast between predator and prey so stark it felt unreal. Titan adjusted his grip minutely, ensuring balance, then turned and climbed out of the ravine. He placed the puppy gently on a patch of shaded earth, away from the heat-blackened soil. Then he went back. One by one, Titan retrieved all 6. Each descent carried risk. Each ascent demanded restraint. By the time he placed the last puppy beside the others, his breathing had deepened, muscles trembling not from exertion, but control. The puppies huddled together instinctively, pressing against the warm ground, still alive, still breathing. From his distant vantage point, Ranger Mike lowered his binoculars with shaking hands. He had witnessed many extraordinary things in his career, but nothing like this. A lion saving wild dog pups was not just rare. It defied everything researchers believed about predator behavior. Titan stood over the group, his massive form shielding them from the rising sun. He looked down at them for a long time, as if waiting for the land itself to object. Nothing did. Instead, a breeze moved through the burned grass, carrying with it the faint, clean scent of renewal. Somewhere beyond the ridge, new life was already beginning. Titan lifted his head and scanned the horizon. Danger still existed. Hyenas would come. Other lions might pass through. The puppies were far from safe. But for now, they were alive. And the law Titan had enforced for years, the law of immediate, unquestioned destruction, had fractured under the weight of a single choice. As he turned toward the rocky outcrops to the west, the puppies stumbled after him on unsteady legs, drawn by warmth they did not understand. Titan slowed his pace. For the first time since the fire, the king was not walking alone. Titan led the way toward the western rocks with a pace far slower than his usual patrol. Every few steps he glanced back, gauging the clumsy progress behind him. The puppies followed as best they could, their movements awkward and uneven, legs too thin to support bodies still weakened by hunger and smoke. They stumbled often, colliding with one another, then pushing forward again with quiet determination. This was not how Titan moved through his kingdom. Normally, he flowed across the land with confidence and speed, covering ground efficiently, never lingering in exposed places. But now, he adjusted his stride unconsciously, shortening it, allowing the smallest among them to keep up. Each pause chipped away at the ruthless rhythm that had defined his life. Ranger Mike watched from a safe distance, struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew. The lion was not escorting prey. He was not herding animals toward a kill zone. He was guiding, waiting, protecting. Mike whispered to himself, without realizing it. That's not possible. Yet it was happening. The rocky outcrop Titan approached had once served as a lookout, a place where he could survey his land and scent the wind for threats. Beneath it lay a narrow crevice formed by fallen stone and ancient roots. The fire had skipped over it, leaving a pocket of shade and relative safety. Titan paused at the entrance and sniffed carefully. No hyenas, no snakes, no rival lions, only silence. He stepped aside, allowing the puppies to shuffle into the hollow. They pressed together instinctively, backs against the stone, eyes darting as they adjusted to the new space. The smallest one, Scout, collapsed almost immediately, sides heaving. Another nudged him with its nose, as if checking whether he was still there. Titan lowered himself just outside the crevice, positioning his body to block the opening. The posture was unmistakable to any predator watching from afar. This place was claimed. As the heat of the day intensified, the puppies grew quieter. Their movements slowed. One by one they curled against the ground, exhausted beyond protest. Titan watched them intently, noting the way their breathing fluttered, how their ribs showed too clearly beneath their skin. They were starving. This realization landed with more weight than Titan expected. Shelter alone would not keep them alive. Warmth alone was not enough. They needed food, food he had no idea how to give. African wild dogs fed their young in ways completely foreign to a solitary lion. There was no nursing mother here, no pack to regurgitate meals. Titan's usual kills, large antelope, zebra, buffalo calves, were useless in this context. Even if he dragged a carcass to the den, the puppies lacked the strength or teeth to benefit. The problem had no obvious solution. Titan rose and stepped away from the den, climbing the rocks above it to survey the land. His stomach tightened with hunger he had ignored since the fire. Hunting was overdue. Instinct urged him to move fast, to seek large prey, to restore balance through blood and muscle. But when he looked down at the crevice, at the 6 small bodies pressed together, something else intervened. He descended the rocks and began tracking, not for his usual quarry, but for something smaller, ground birds, hares, anything manageable. Ranger Mike noticed the shift immediately. Titan's path changed, his focus narrowed. This was hunting behavior, but altered, restrained. Mike followed at a distance, documenting every movement, every deviation from expectation. Titan's first attempt was clumsy. He missed a guinea fowl entirely, misjudging its speed. The second escaped into thick brush. Frustration flared briefly, sharp and dangerous, but Titan forced it down. He adjusted. He waited longer. He struck differently. When he finally succeeded, the kill was small and unsatisfying by his standards. But he carried it back to the den without consuming it fully, his body resisting the instinct to feed himself first. The puppies stirred when he returned, sensing motion, scent, life. They crawled toward him weakly, mouths opening and closing without sound. Titan hesitated, standing over them with uncertainty that bordered on discomfort. He did what instinct allowed, tearing the prey into manageable pieces, nudging it closer. The puppies mouthed at it clumsily, managing only a few weak bites. It was not enough. The day wore on. The puppy's energy waned again. Titan felt the unfamiliar pressure of failure. As dusk approached, another scent drifted into the area. Lioness. Titan's head snapped up instantly. His posture stiffened, muscles coiling beneath his mane. The scent was fresh and confident, not the trace of a passing traveler. Someone was nearby. Nala emerged from the tall grass just before sunset, her golden coat catching the fading light. She was lean, strong, and clearly experienced. Her eyes locked onto Titan immediately, calculating distance and intent. She had lost a pride months earlier and had been moving through contested land ever since. Her gaze flicked toward the crevice. Titan stepped forward, placing himself fully between her and the den. His body language was unmistakable. This was not an invitation. This was a warning. Nala circled slowly, tail twitching. She caught the scent then. 6 young animals, vulnerable and easy. Her ears tilted forward with interest. She had survived long enough to recognize opportunity when it presented itself. She stopped just outside Titan's striking range. This was not a territorial dispute. This was something far more dangerous. Titan did not roar. He did not charge. He lowered his head and stared back, unmoving. The tension stretched thin. Nala tested him with a step forward. Titan responded instantly, lunging just enough to kick dust into the air, teeth flashing in silent threat. The message was clear. These lives were not negotiable. After a long, assessing pause, Nala stepped back. Her eyes lingered on the den one last time before she turned and disappeared into the darkening grass. Titan remained alert long after she was gone. Night fell fully, bringing cooler air and new dangers. Hyenas would roam soon, so would leopards. The land did not care about intentions, only outcomes. Titan lay down at the mouth of the crevice, his massive body forming a wall of muscle and bone. Behind him, the puppies pressed closer together, instinctively seeking the warmth he radiated. As the stars appeared overhead, Titan stared into the darkness, aware that he had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. He had claimed something no lion was meant to claim. And the cost of that decision was only beginning to reveal itself. The night passed in fragments of sound and shadow. Titan did not sleep the way he once had, surrendering to rest with confidence earned through dominance. Instead, he drifted in shallow intervals, senses alert, muscles taut. Every rustle of grass, every distant call cut through him with heightened urgency. The land was never truly silent, but tonight it felt watchful. Behind him, the puppies shifted and murmured in their dreams, their small bodies pressed together for warmth. From time to time, one of them brushed against Titan's flank, seeking contact without understanding why. Each time it happened, Titan stiffened, then forced himself to remain still. His instinct was not built for this closeness. His body was a weapon, not a shelter. Yet here he was, serving as both. As the moon climbed higher, Titan found himself staring into the darkness beyond the den, wrestling with a tension that refused to resolve. Part of him remained unchanged, the apex predator who had survived by eliminating threats before they grew. That voice was cold, efficient, relentless. It reminded him of the risks he was taking, of Nala's calculating eyes, of the hyenas that would eventually follow the scent of blood and weakness, of the fact that 6 wild dogs, if they lived, would one day hunt his prey. The logic was airtight. Kill them now, end the vulnerability, restore order. But another voice, quieter, unfamiliar, had begun to speak. It did not argue with logic. It asked questions instead. What if they are not threats yet? What if strength can wait? What if survival does not always require destruction? Titan had no words for this conflict, no framework to contain it. He only knew that the presence of the puppies had introduced hesitation where certainty once lived, and hesitation, in his world, was dangerous. Just before dawn, a sharp cry split the air. Titan was on his feet instantly. The sound came from the east, a distressed yelp, followed by a chorus of laughter unmistakable even at a distance. Hyenas. Close enough to matter. Titan moved silently to the edge of the rocks and scanned the plains. Shapes shifted in the half-light, low to the ground, circling with practiced patience. They had not found the den yet, but they were searching. The fire had disrupted food sources. Hunger sharpened their boldness. Titan returned to the den and positioned himself more tightly across the entrance. His body blocked the puppies completely now. If the hyenas came closer, they would meet him first. The sun rose slowly, painting the land in pale gold. With daylight came a brief reprieve. Hyenas retreated to their hiding places, waiting for another opportunity. Titan remained vigilant long after the threat faded. When the puppies stirred again, the weakness in their movements was unmistakable. They were failing. Titan stood and paced, frustration tightening his chest. He had kept them alive, through the night, but barely. Hunger hollowed them out faster than he could respond. His earlier attempts at feeding had accomplished little. The reality pressed in on him with brutal clarity. Good intentions were not enough. He left the den again, moving farther this time, deeper into unfamiliar ground. Ranger Mike followed at a distance, his concern growing with every altered behavior. Titan was no longer following predictable patterns. He was improvising, and improvisation carried risk. The hunt that followed was exhausting. Titan targeted smaller prey again, pushing himself beyond normal limits. His body demanded efficiency, but he denied it, slowing himself deliberately, choosing caution over speed. Each kill felt incomplete, unsatisfying. Each return to the den felt urgent and inadequate. When he arrived, the puppies responded weakly, mouths opening, bodies inching forward. Titan tried again, tearing, nudging, offering. This time, a few managed to swallow small amounts. It was progress, but fragile. As the day wore on, exhaustion set in, for all of them. Titan lay beside the den, half in shadow, half in sun. His breathing slowed. The puppies pressed against his side, drawn to warmth and presence they could not define. Their tiny heartbeats fluttered against his ribs, a sensation that unsettled him more than any challenge from a rival male. This closeness stripped away pretense. He could not deny it anymore. Something fundamental was changing within him. He no longer saw the puppies as future enemies alone. He saw individuals, each with a distinct scent, a distinct movement, a distinct way of pressing into the world. The smallest Scout clung closer than the others. Another, broader in the shoulders even now, pushed forward more aggressively when food appeared. These details mattered. The realization frightened him. Late that afternoon, the wind shifted, carrying a scent Titan recognized instantly, another wild dog pack far to the south. Adults, strong, coordinated. His muscles tensed reflexively, old hatred rising to meet the challenge. Then he looked down at the puppies. The hatred faltered. This was the fracture widening, the break growing deeper. Titan felt the ground shift beneath his understanding of himself. If he hesitated against adult wild dogs, if his judgment softened, he could lose everything. Territory, authority, life. Ranger. Mike sensed the change even from afar. Titan's posture had altered. His movements lacked their former sharpness. Something invisible was pulling at him from the inside. As evening approached again, Titan made a decision, not one he fully understood, but one that felt necessary. He repositioned the den, moving the puppies one by one to a deeper, more concealed hollow beneath a fallen slab of stone. The process was slow and risky, but the new location offered better protection from scavengers and wandering eyes. When the last puppy was settled, Titan collapsed beside the entrance, physically and mentally drained. The sun dipped below the horizon and shadows reclaimed the land. Titan stared into the dark, aware that the greatest battle he had ever faced was not approaching from the outside. It was already within him, eroding instincts that had once kept him alive. He did not know how this war would end, only that it had truly begun. Morning arrived, without ceremony. There was no roar to announce it, no triumphant declaration of ownership echoing across the plains. Titan rose quietly from the stone hollow, his movements careful, measured in a way they had never been before. The land beyond the rocks waited as it always had, indifferent to his inner struggle. But Titan was no longer indifferent to himself. The puppies stirred as he moved, drawn by instinct to the absence of his warmth. They emerged from the hollow in an uneven cluster, blinking against the light, legs trembling beneath bodies that were still too thin. Over the past 2 days, they had learned something new, something no wild dog pup should ever have learned. They had learned where safety lived. Titan watched them closely. He knew each of them now by more than scent alone. Ruby, the only female, was the first to stand each morning, ears lifted high despite her weakness. Max, broader than the others, pushed forward whenever food appeared, already asserting a quiet dominance. Leo lingered at the edges, observing before acting. Buddy followed whoever moved first, while Miles stayed close to Titan's flank, pressing into him whenever uncertainty arose. Scout, the smallest, never strayed far at all. These distinctions mattered to Titan in a way that unsettled him. He had begun to think of them as individuals. The realization struck him harder than hunger. In nature, individuality was a luxury reserved for the strong. For prey, for the young, survival depended on blending in, not standing out. And yet Titan found himself tracking their differences, adjusting his movements and responses to accommodate each one. He was no longer merely protecting life, he was shaping it. Ranger Mike observed this shift with a growing sense of disbelief. From his vantage point, the lion's routines had changed entirely. Titan hunted more frequently but with less efficiency, returning often with small prey. His patrols had shortened. He circled the same area repeatedly, abandoning wide territorial sweeps that once defined his rule. Mike wrote careful notes, his handwriting tight with concentration. This was not coincidence. This was behavior. By midday, the heat settled heavily over the land. Titan retreated with the puppies into the shade of the rocks, positioning himself once again as a barrier between them and the open plain. He lay on his side, ribs expanding slowly, deliberately, as the puppies pressed against him. Their breathing synced unevenly with his own, fast and shallow compared to his deep, steady rhythm. A low growl rumbled in Titan's chest, not in warning, but in response. The sound vibrated through his body and into the puppies, calming them in a way he had not anticipated. They stilled, their tiny forms relaxing against him. The sound frightened him. That growl belonged to something ancient and powerful, but this use of it, this quiet, soothing resonance, was foreign. It belonged to a father, not a killer. The afternoon passed in tense quiet until the wind shifted. Titan lifted his head instantly. The scent came sharp and unmistakable. Nala. She was closer this time. Titan rose to his feet, positioning himself between the hollow and the approaching presence. His mane bristled as she emerged from the tall grass, her movements confident, eyes fixed not on him, but on what lay behind him. Nala had not forgotten. She circled slowly, testing distance, testing resolve. Hunger had etched itself deeper into her frame since their last encounter. Her gaze flicked toward the hollow again, calculating risk versus reward. 6 young animals represented an opportunity few predators would ignore. Titan did not retreat. He took a single step forward, muscles tightening beneath his scarred hide. His posture was different now, not expansive, not territorial. It was anchored, rooted. This was not about land. This was about defense. Nala stopped. For a long moment they stared at one another across the burned grass. 2 survivors, shaped by loss, reading each other with brutal clarity. Nala understood something then, not consciously, but instinctively. Titan would not yield. A fight here would not be clean. Not quick, and the cost might be more than she could afford. With a final assessing look, she turned and vanished once more into the savannah. Titan did not relax until her scent faded completely. Only then did he return to the hollow, where the puppies waited, unaware of how close death had come. Scout wobbled forward and pressed his head against Titan's foreleg, seeking reassurance. Titan remained still, allowing the contact. That night, the hyenas came. Their laughter rose from multiple directions, closer than before. They had found the scent trail. Titan placed himself at the hollow's entrance again, body tense, eyes fixed on the darkness. When the first shape lunged from the shadows, Titan met it with explosive force. The fight was short but violent. Titan charged, roaring, striking with a fury that surpassed anything Ranger Mike had witnessed. This was not calculated dominance. This was rage fueled by something deeper than territory. The hyenas scattered, retreating with sharp cries into the night. Titan returned to the hollow, bleeding from shallow wounds, chest heaving. The puppies pressed against him, trembling. As the adrenaline faded, Titan felt the weight of what had just happened settle over him. He had risked injury, serious injury, for lives that nature never intended him to value. A broken leg, a torn tendon, and his reign would end. Rivals would come. Death would follow. Yet even as logic demanded retreat, his body remained anchored beside the hollow. The truth settled in quietly, without ceremony. There was no turning back. Titan was no longer merely a lion guarding his territory. He had become something that should not exist, a solitary predator bound by responsibility to creatures that defied every rule of his species. The puppies slept, unaware of the war they had ignited within him. Titan watched the stars emerge overhead, knowing with painful clarity that this path would cost him something, perhaps everything. And still, when dawn came again, he would rise beside them. Because the battle he was fighting now was no longer against the world, it was against himself. The days that followed blurred into a pattern Titan no longer recognized as his own life. Dawn no longer meant expansion, no sweeping patrols, no roaring declarations across the plains. Instead, it meant calculation. How far could he go without leaving the puppies exposed? How long could he hunt before hunger or fear overtook them? His world had shrunk to a radius measured not in miles, but in heartbeats. The puppies were growing stronger, but strength came with restlessness. Ruby tested her legs each morning, wobbling farther from the hollow before Titan's presence pulled her back. Max pushed against his siblings during feeding, asserting himself with a stubbornness that bordered on defiance. Scout still lagged behind, panting quickly, but even he began to explore beyond Titan's immediate shadow. Their movement filled Titan with conflicting sensations, pride intertwined with unease. Mobility meant survival, but it also meant vulnerability. Every step they took beyond the rocks expanded the number of threats Titan had to track. Hunting became an exercise in restraint. Titan abandoned his traditional ambush routes and targeted smaller prey closer to the den. It was inefficient and humiliating by his former standards. His body demanded the satisfaction of a full kill, the long rest that followed, but he denied it again and again. Hunger sharpened his senses, but dulled his patience. The cost of this altered life etched itself into his frame, subtle but undeniable. Ranger Mike noticed the change immediately. Through binoculars, he saw Titan hesitate at the sight of adult wild dogs skirting the far edge of the territory. Once, such an encounter would have triggered an immediate charge. Now, Titan paused. His muscles coiled, but he did not strike. Mike lowered his binoculars slowly, unease settling deep in his chest. That hesitation could kill him. The shift in Titan's behavior did not go unnoticed by the land itself. Other predators sensed it too. Leopards lingered longer in trees. Hyenas tested boundaries more boldly. And one afternoon, as Titan returned from a failed hunt, the threat became unavoidable. The hyenas came in daylight. 3 of them appeared at the edge of the grass, bold and deliberate. They did not laugh. They did not rush. They simply watched the hollow, eyes fixed on movement they could not yet see. Their strategy had changed. They had learned. Titan placed himself between them and the puppies, head lowered, shoulders squared. He roared once, a deep, resonant warning that vibrated across the ground. The hyenas flinched, but they did not retreat. The standoff stretched thin. Then one of the puppies, Buddy, wandered too close to the edge of the rocks. Titan reacted instantly. He lunged, intercepting the hyenas with explosive force. The fight was brutal and close. Dust and ash filled the air as Titan struck again and again, driving the attackers back with raw power, fueled by something far more volatile than territorial rage. When it was over, the hyenas fled, limping and bleeding. Titan stood alone, chest heaving, blood seeping from shallow wounds along his flank. The puppies huddled together behind him, shaking. Ranger Mike exhaled shakily. Titan had won, but at a cost. The wounds were not serious, but they were reminders. Titan could not afford many more confrontations like that. Injury slowed a lion. Weakness invited challengers, and challengers did not care about good intentions. That night, as Titan lay beside the hollow, exhaustion weighed heavily on him. The puppies slept fitfully, stirring often, drawn by instincts that were awakening faster than Titan could control. In the distance, faint sounds carried on the wind. Wild dog calls. Titan lifted his head slowly. The sound was unmistakable. A series of sharp, high-pitched vocalizations traveling across the plains. A pack had moved closer, drawn by prey migration after the fire. The calls stirred something immediate in the puppies. Their ears twitched, their bodies shifted. Scout lifted his head and whimpered softly, answering without understanding why. Titan felt the response ripple through him like a warning bell. This was different from hyenas, different from Nala. These were the puppy's own kind. Over the next days, the calls came more frequently, sometimes closer, sometimes fading into silence, only to return hours later. Each time, the puppies reacted with growing intensity. They paced, they vocalized. They pressed against Titan, then pulled away, caught between comfort and curiosity. Titan began to realize something he had avoided until now. He was changing them. By sheltering them so completely, by shaping their earliest experiences around his presence, he was altering instincts that should have been forming differently. They followed him as if he were their anchor, but anchors were not meant to move. One afternoon, Titan returned from a hunt to find the hollow disturbingly quiet. His heart slammed hard against his ribs. Scout was gone. Titan's senses flared instantly. He circled the area, nostrils wide, tracking the smallest scent disturbance. Panic, pure and unfamiliar, drove him forward faster than hunger ever had. The trail led away from the rocks, downwind, toward the wild dog calls. Titan followed at a distance, each step measured now not by aggression, but by restraint. He crested a low rise and froze. Below him, in a patch of tall grass, Scout crouched at the edge of a clearing. Beyond him lay the wild dog pack, 12 adults resting in the afternoon shade. Scout trembled, but he did not flee. The pack had noticed him. Titan's muscles locked, ready to explode into violence if needed. But the attack never came. Instead, one of the adults stepped forward slowly, posture low, movements cautious. Scout responded instinctively, lowering his body in a submissive gesture Titan had never taught him. The interaction unfolded with eerie gentleness. Titan watched, breath held, as Scout took his first steps into a world Titan could never give him. For the first time, the truth crystallized with devastating clarity. Protecting the puppies was no longer the hardest part. Knowing when protection became a cage, that was the battle he might not survive. Titan remained frozen on the ridge, his massive body concealed by tall grass and shadow. Below him, the clearing seemed unnaturally still, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Scout crouched near the edge, small chest fluttering with quick, nervous breaths. Every instinct Titan possessed urged him to charge, to scatter the wild dogs and reclaim what he had guarded with blood and sacrifice. But he did not move. The adult wild dogs did not rush forward either. They stood in a loose arc, their posture alert but controlled. Their bodies carried the marks of a life built on cooperation, lean frames, scarred muzzles, eyes that tracked one another constantly. This was not chaos. This was order of a different kind. One of them, a tall male with a pale blaze across his face, stepped forward slowly. His movements were deliberate, careful not to trigger fear. He lowered his head slightly, then stopped a few paces from Scout. Scout responded without hesitation. He dropped his body closer to the ground, tail tucked, ears flattened just enough to signal respect. It was a posture Titan had never seen him use. It had not been taught. It had been remembered. Titan felt the moment land inside him like a blow. This was not curiosity. This was recognition. The adult wild dog sniffed the air around Scout, then circled him once, calm and unhurried. Another adult approached, then another, forming a loose ring that enclosed the small pup without trapping him. Their movements were fluid, instinctive, shaped by generations of shared survival. Scout took a tentative step forward. No one stopped him. From his vantage point, Titan could see the tension ease from Scout's body. His breathing slowed. His head lifted. The fear did not disappear, but it transformed into something else. Something purposeful. Belonging. Titan's claws dug into the earth as his instincts clashed violently within him. He could end this in seconds. One roar, one charge. The pack would scatter, leaving Scout behind. He would be safe again, pressed against Titan's flank, far from danger. But at what cost? Titan remembered the night Scout struggled to eat, the days he lagged behind his siblings, the way he reacted to the distant calls that stirred something Titan could not reach. This clearing was answering a need Titan had only delayed, not erased. As if summoned by the moment itself, the other puppies appeared at the edge of the ridge behind Titan. Ruby stood first, ears lifted, eyes locked on the clearing below. Max pushed forward beside her, muscles tense, curiosity blazing. Leo and Buddy followed cautiously, while Miles lingered near Titan's hind leg, uncertain. They had followed Scout's scent. Titan turned his head slowly, meeting their gaze. For a moment they hesitated, torn between the safety they knew and the pull they felt. Then Ruby stepped past him. Titan did not stop her. One by one, the puppies descended toward the clearing. Their movements were awkward but determined, driven by something deeper than fear. The adult wild dogs shifted subtly, making space, adjusting their formation without breaking it. The moment stretched long and fragile. Ranger Mike, observing from a distant rise, had lowered his binoculars. His hands trembled slightly. He had never witnessed anything like this, not in textbooks, not in documentaries, not in years of field work. This was not a confrontation. It was a negotiation written in instinct rather than language. As the puppies entered the clearing, the adult wild dogs responded with restraint that astonished him. No snapping, no aggression, only investigation and quiet acknowledgement. The pale-faced male, the pack's leader, approached Titan's line of sight briefly and stopped. Their eyes met. There was no challenge in that gaze, no fear either. It was something else entirely, an understanding that crossed the boundaries Titan had always believed were absolute. Both of them were protectors. The pack began to move as the sun dipped lower, shifting naturally toward their evening routine. The puppies followed without being herded, their steps growing more confident with each moment. Ruby trotted closer to the adults. Max mimicked their posture almost immediately. Leo watched, absorbing patterns. Buddy stayed near Scout. Miles lingered, glancing back repeatedly. Titan followed at a distance. He did not interfere. He did not retreat. He shadowed them from the edge of the grass, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to allow the world to unfold without his weight pressing down on it. The days that followed tested him more than any battle ever had. He tracked the pack as they hunted, noting how the puppies learned through imitation rather than instruction. Ruby adapted quickly, her natural boldness finding structure within the pack's coordinated movements. Max earned respect through sheer determination. Leo's observational instincts made him valuable even now. Buddy mirrored behaviors eagerly, while Scout, once the weakest, found confidence in the collective rhythm. Miles struggled the most. He often broke away, running back toward Titan before stopping short, torn between two worlds. Titan watched him with quiet anguish, resisting the urge to close the distance. Each time, Miles returned to the pack on his own. Night after night, Titan maintained his vigil. He slept little, positioning himself downwind, always alert. Hyenas kept their distance. Nala did not return. The land seemed to accept the new arrangement without protest. Still, Titan knew this could not last forever. On the third evening, as the sky burned orange and red above the plains, the pack gathered atop a low rise overlooking the territory. The puppies stood among them now, no longer outsiders. When they noticed Titan below, they hesitated. Then they approached him. The moment unfolded slowly, deliberately, as if each step carried weight beyond its size. Ruby reached him first, pressing her head briefly against his chest. Max followed, standing tall beside him before stepping back. Leo met his gaze, holding it longer than necessary. Buddies circled him once, tail wagging uncertainly. Scout climbed onto Titan's foreleg, resting there as if to prove he could. Miles lingered last. He pressed his small body against Titan's side and stayed there for a long, quiet moment. Titan did not move. He memorized the weight, the warmth, the reality of what he was losing and what he was giving. When the pack began to move again, the puppies followed without looking back. Titan remained on the rise long after they disappeared into the tall grass. The wind carried their voices away, faint but unmistakable. For the first time since the fire, Titan did not feel like a king. He felt like a father who had done the one thing love demanded most. He had let go. The savannah returned to its rhythms slowly, as it always did. Dawn rose without ceremony, light spilling across the plains as if nothing extraordinary had ever occurred. The grasses swayed. Birds resumed their calls. Life moved forward, indifferent to the invisible lines that had been crossed. Titan stood alone on the ridge where the puppies had last touched him. For the first time in weeks, there was no small body pressed against his flank, no fragile breath fluttering near his ribs. The absence was physical, almost painful, like a missing limb his body had not yet learned to live without. He remained still as the sun climbed, staring across the land that was once again entirely his. And yet, it no longer felt the same. His patrols resumed gradually, cautious and deliberate. Titan reclaimed the wide arcs of his territory, testing old scent markers, reaffirming boundaries that had gone unattended. Rival males skirted the edges but did not challenge him. Hyenas gave his paths a respectful distance. The Lion King had not weakened in the eyes of the wild. If anything, his presence carried a deeper gravity. Ranger Mike watched this transformation with quiet awe. Titan's movements were more measured now, his hunts more selective. He no longer killed out of irritation or assertion. Each strike served a purpose. Each decision felt considered. Mike noted subtle changes in the ecosystem as well, fewer reckless clashes, more balance than before. Something had shifted. Weeks passed. Then, one evening, the wind carried a familiar sound. Wild dogs. Titan lifted his head instantly, ears turning toward the distant calls. His muscles tensed, not with anger, but with recognition. The sounds were different now, stronger, more confident, layered with coordination. A pack on the move. He followed the sound to the edge of his territory and stopped. There they were. The pack emerged from the tall grass at a distance, running in clean, practiced formation. They were larger now, stronger, their movements sharp and synchronized. And among them, undeniably, unmistakably, were 6 shapes Titan knew by heart. Ruby ran near the front, her stride powerful and sure. Max held position beside an adult male, matching his pace effortlessly. Leo flanked the group, eyes alert, constantly scanning. Buddy darted in and out of formation, exuberant but disciplined. Scout, once the weakest, kept up without faltering, his earlier fragility replaced by confidence. Miles stayed close to the center, calm and steady, anchoring the group's rhythm. They were thriving. Titan remained still as the pack passed along the far edge of his land. He did not roar. He did not approach. He watched. For a brief moment, Ruby slowed and turned her head. Her gaze met his across the distance. It lasted no more than a heartbeat, but it was enough. Recognition. Then she turned forward again, and the pack disappeared into the grass. Titan exhaled slowly. The sensation that filled him was unlike any victory he had known. There was no surge of dominance, no thrill of conquest. Instead, there was something deeper and steadier, an understanding that what he had given had not been lost. It had multiplied. As seasons shifted and time continued its quiet march, Titan aged as all kings do. His mane lightened at the edges. His scars stiffened in the cold mornings. He spent more time on the ridge where the land opened wide before him, watching migrations come and go, sensing the interconnected web he now understood more clearly than ever. He no longer saw the wild as a collection of threats and resources alone. He saw relationships. When Ranger Mike later reviewed years of footage and notes, he struggled to explain what Titan represented. No scientific framework captured the full truth. Behavioral anomalies could be documented, but meaning resisted measurement. What Titan had done was not a violation of nature. It was an expansion of it. The Lion King had battled his instincts and won, not by destroying them, but by mastering them. He had learned that strength was not diminished by restraint, and power did not vanish when shared. The greatest force he had ever wielded was not his roar or his claws. It was his choice. As the sun dipped below the horizon one final time in this chapter of his life, Titan stood silhouetted against the sky, no longer alone in the way he once was. The land still belonged to him, but now it carried echoes of lives he had shaped and released. And somewhere beyond the tall grass, 6 wild dogs ran freely, strong, whole, and exactly who they were meant to be. Titan lowered his head, not in submission, but in peace. The battle was over, and the victory was quiet.